But the two panelists will develop much better this kind of preliminary introductory ideas. And so I'm very pleased to leave the floor to Vincent de Rivaz. Vincent has been a former CEO of a major energy company, EDF Energy. He has been in this sector for many years, and he has been the CEO with the longest career in the UK energy sector, which I think it's in itself a big achievement. So I leave the floor to Vincent, please.
Thank you very much, Elena. Dear friends, it is a tremendous pleasure and honor to address this conference, and thank you so much to have included me. So, for 16 years, I have been the CEO of the largest power company in Britain, a leader in generation, distribution, and supply of electricity with, at the peak, up to 20,000 employees up and down the country. As a CEO, I have always felt that I was a boss in training, always eager to learn from others. So I will share with you what I have learned as a practitioner. I will also reflect on the inspiring discussions we had in the last year or so within the French branch of CAPP. I won't give you a lecture on management through a litany of corporate buzzwords. I have chosen to focus on the third side of the triangle: efficiency, sustainability, inclusion. Inclusion is not only a means, it is a positive choice for the common good. First, allow me to give the floor to St. Paul. In his letters to the Corinthians, Paul is trying to manage them. First, in warning them about divisions. Two, in discarding any abuse of power. I quote, "I do appeal to you to make up the differences between you, to be united in your belief and your practices. It is clear that there are serious differences among you." What I mean are all these slogans that you have, like, I am for Paul, I am for Apollos, I am for Cephas, I am for Christ. Has the Christ been parceled out? Two, no, the body must be identified with any one of its parts. If the foot was to say, I'm not the hand, so I don't belong to the body, would that mean that it stops to be part of the body? And third, it is not for me to exercise a power on your face, but to contribute to your joy, because through your faith, you are done. After St. Paul, now a short message from Pope Francis. In his apostolic exhortation, Amoris Laetitia, the Pope insists on 4 actions underpinning inclusion: to welcome, to accompany, to discern, to integrate. So, what do we mean by inclusion? Firstly, what we don't mean by inclusion. It must not be the Trojan horse of the many ideologies knocking at the door of modernity, gender theory, amongst others. It is part of the responsibility of business leaders to prevent their companies from becoming the ideological battlefields far from business considerations. Inclusion is not about ticking the boxes of a reporting template. It's all about relishing the opportunities of an inclusive diversity, not a divisive. Assembling, not opposing. Welcoming, not judging. Respecting, not inflaming differences. building bridges, not raising drawbridges. I will present 10 facets of inclusion. One, leadership. Leaders have to include themselves in the inclusion. It is not them, those who are supposed to be led, and us, who are supposed or deemed to be the leaders, the elites. Those who lead are not innocent bystanders, sorry. I repeat. Those who lead are not innocent bystanders, sorry. They are judged by their work, not their talk. Nothing is worse than not living up to what we preach. Leaders must be sensitive to how actually they are perceived, aware of the shadow they may cast, unwillingly hampering inclusion. Preaching inclusion and staying out of the fence does not cut it. Let's be honest, it can become very personal and emotional. Standing aloof is a temptation of self-protection. It is a weakness. Nothing we can do can make us for this weakness that lies deep down. So we can do better, giving their place to affection and proximity, to interactions and humility, to inclusion. To acknowledge that we can be part of the problem in order to ease the tensions, but never dodge contradictions. Giving needs listening. Explaining requires putting oneself in the shoes of those whom we wish to convince. Inclusion is an art, not a science. It is part of the art of the arts, the government of men and women. 2, teamwork and trust. There is no teamwork without transparency. There is no transparency without trust. And there is no trust without teamwork. Working as a team is the success factor. There are 2 opposite risks in any organization, the silocracy and the bureaucracy. The silos develop when people take responsibilities for their respective areas, but ignore that their job is linked with others. They forget their impact on others and that they depend on others, that they are part of a value chain internally and externally. Creating value from end-to-end processes is a shared responsibility. Hyper-motivated people can become selfish or maverick or loose cannons. Then they discard that the sum of the parts is what matters at the end of the day. They may feel responsible of their part, but not accountable for the whole. Silocracy can encourage rivalry. Emulation inside an organization is healthy. Rivalry is not. Rivalry feeds envy and is fed by envy. Envy is at the heart of many people knots and also of collective tensions. In the spectrum of possible business models, the bureaucracy is the opposite side of silocracy. No one can deny that our businesses can be complex and that to address that complexity, we need robust processes and, dare I say, discipline. But cumbersome processes and procedures are not the solution when they become a fake proxy for responsibility and accountability. Nobody is responsible nor accountable when all is down to processes and bureaucracy. In the wake of the liberalization and fragmentation of the UK energy market, the privatized power companies, formerly state-owned, sent the pendulum strongly and quickly from bureaucracy to silocracy. The whole power system was deconstructed. Competition first, serving together the general interest, was downgraded. Common good was not on the top of the agenda. And the right balance is nor silocracy nor bureaucracy. 3, productivity. The quest for higher remuneration is palatable and commendable. The demand for fairness in sharing the value created is also commendable, legitimate. But let us make no mistake, the main revendication is for dignity, respect, and to be given the opportunity to develop one's potential. Flexibility and adaptability are essential options for a performing and sustainable business. But mere high and fire culture is a recipe for companies' failure, because it is a recipe for employees' disenfranchisement. Employees' productivity is indexed on their competence and on their pride in what they do, how they do it, and why they do it. They have to be included in the vision of a project, involved in the shaping of the objectives, aware of the key performance indicators, and benefiting individually of the collective achievements. That is all about a common bond, blending the teams up and down the project or up and down the company. The company is defined by a project, by its project. A project to succeed needs people wanting to make the extra mile for it, rolling up their sleeves for it, not people searching for scapegoats. In the construction sector, I have seen the negative impact of the broken chain of empowerment between line management and top management, which inevitably induces broken chain between workers and line management. This experience led us to sign with all the unions an unprecedented social deal before kick-starting the largest construction project in Europe, a 22 billion, I don't know how many cappuccinos, 22 billion nuclear project in Somerset to secure net zero future of Britain. And 5 years later, it bears fruit. What we are building there is much more than a power station. To motivate employees, it is clear that one must care about the lengthening of the duration of the contracts as opposed to reiteration of short-term contracts. That is the condition for having a decent and efficient training policy. So for transmission, competence is also a matter of training. Education must not be the missing point of the inclusion puzzle. Training is a channel for transmission of knowledge and experience. It is important to acknowledge what we owe to our predecessors and also what we owe to our successors. It means humility, to acknowledge that we are only an intergenerational link in the chain of the development of a company. Actually, it means also pride of being the subject, not only the object of this transmission. Being an heir does not make anyone really happy. What matters is to be given a chance to become a pioneer and in turn to transmit. In this way, we are only the stewards of our business. We are in a digital world e-working, e-learning, e-design, e-procurement, e-everywhere. Welcome to this new rerum novarum of the new technologies. Let us make sure, though, that we keep humans inside. Despite all the obvious advantages of the e-training or e-learning, we decided to have our own campus within the company, a physical place, a hub, where people can actually meet each other in person. In the country, far from London, to nurture the DNA of an inclusive company, bringing together young and old employees, technicians and accountants, apprentices and graduates. And we named the refectory of the campus the Brassage. The intelligence is fed by what it receives. The heart is fed by what it gives. 5, innovation. We need to cherish as a treasury the diversities of personalities and vocations. Inclusion doesn't mean uniformity. Unity doesn't mean one size fits for all. It is critical that innovation is boosted. If we don't innovate, we die. Collective endeavors should not hamper risk-taking. Risk-taking must not jeopardize collective endeavor. To nurture innovation, we need to encourage individualities, not to blossom within the mainstream business, but be aware of the maverick individualists which stand at the fringe. The world of startups and the world of industry must not be opposed. Startups must not elbow their ways in opposition to mature industry, nor mature industry fear about startup.
Vincent, we are really running out of time.
Yes,
so.
I am using my 15 minutes quickly. I just want to say a few words, if you allow me. We cannot transform if we are alone. The higher risk of loneliness is to feel disempowered and powerless. And again, it's all about trust. We cannot give what we don't have. We therefore cannot trust people if we don't trust ourselves. I have just a few other examples I want to give about the facets of inclusion in management. Health and safety. Health and safety are the #1 priority of a company. To be a safe company requires a no-blame culture in the company. Near misses must be reported without fear. We learn of near misses as much as we learn from actual failures. And we need to encourage people to speak out and to seek out for help when it is not right. We have the mantra in our company, be your brothers and sisters keepers to secure a safe working place. Happiness or joy, to use simple word, is not a weird word in the workplace. It must be included in our business model. One cannot be happy if one does not feel useful. Workplace is a place to be useful and therefore to be happy. Among few others, there are 2 enablers for happiness in the workplace: subsidiarity and serendipity. Subsidiarity must be practiced assiduously. And serendipity, it's a word I've learned in Britain. The aptitude to make an unexpected discovery by chance, to grasp the usefulness of the unexpected.
Vincent, sorry, we have 6 minutes to the end of this session, so you should really try to go to the very last conclusion.
Okay. So, thank you. So, private and public partnership inclusion. Alleged British liberal prime minister said, there is no such a thing as society. And the recent pandemic in many of our countries has shown that there is such thing as society. It is also showed that there is such thing as a state. Even more important, it showed that there is such thing as good coordination between society and state, between public and private sector. Okay. So
thank you. I think we really need to move to His Excellency Bishop Paul Tighe.
Just give my conclusion.
I think we really need to give at least 5-10 minutes to Bishop Tighe. So thank you. Thank you for sharing with us these good practices. And I leave immediately the floor to Bishop Tighe. Thank you.
When I began thinking about this talk a year ago, I think somewhat ambitiously gave myself the title of Reconstructing Consensus and Trust in a Digital Age, Dialogue in the Search for Truth in the Context of the Pandemic. Somewhat overly stated and ambitious like you do a year before, but at least I'm pleased I didn't talk about the post-pandemic age. I was at least further. What I really would like to simply talk to for a moment is about the necessity for dialogue. What we've heard in the presentations today remind us that many of the issues we're dealing with are global issues. Issues such as inequality, climate change, migration, the regulation eventually of technology and AI. All these are global issues. The pandemic, I think, has taught us above all, we do not live on islands. Not even New Zealand can be an island for the purpose of something that is truly global. We need solutions that are global, that involve people coming from different countries, coming from different political systems, coming with different religious beliefs and with different ethical approaches. The challenge of that is, how do we bring these different worldviews, these different philosophies together? And dialogue, which is the bringing together or the reaching across or between different logoi, different ways of seeing the world, is for me the key approach that we need to foster. It's also, I think, something that Pope Francis has prioritized. Even in talking about the environment, he speaks 30-something times about dialogue. In Fratelli Tutti, it's almost 50. So this is a key word and a key concept. For him, what's important is the inclusivity of that dialogue, something that Vincent has brought true to us, at the importance that is at the micro level, we also need at the macro level. That willingness to listen to each other, to learn from each other. I'll skip along here. Dialogue is fundamentally, though, I think, an attitude. It's not simply a technique or a procedural mechanism for bringing people into a room together. I have this slide because I think what Pope Francis really wants to do is to help us to see the other person as another human being, as somebody of equal dignity and value to ourselves. When he went to Lesbos, I think what he succeeded in doing was giving a face to people who were being presented in popular discourse as a horde, as an invading group, as a threat to the future of our countries. He was giving a face to people. And I think all dialogue needs to begin with that attitude of seeing the other as a person who has something of value to say, who has something to contribute, who is ultimately my brother or sister. I think we have that with the Pope when he talks about our common home. It enriches the notion of interdependence, which UN documents so often speak about, because it reminds us it's a home. It's not just we're obliged to live together, but we are brothers and sisters who live together and who share a destiny. Maybe recapturing some of the richness of the African tradition of Ubuntu. I am because we are. The Asian traditions of the sense of, as you spoke again, we're not simply individuals in competition with each other. We're individuals who will only manage to flourish if we also take account of each other's dignity, value, and worth. Push along a bit further here. One of the concepts I think that is important in this is when we dialogue, dialogue will only be meaningless if we have a commitment to search together for truth, for objectivity, something that scientists are very good at, recognizing that there are objective answers. One of the things I think from a philosophical perspective we need to do is we need to counteract a kind of relativism that has crept into popular mentality, that there are no right or wrong answers. Goodwill, good intentions will not be enough to present sustainable solutions to our global problems. We need the capacity to debate together, to discuss together, to reflect on what it means to be human as individuals and in society, and make that a criteria by which we can begin to judge what are the appropriate solutions, what are the solutions that are truly inclusive, what are the solutions that in the long term will be sustainable. A key dialogue there will be with science. Science, and I love the expression, will be the fuel for progress. That is, I think, we need science. And as a church, I think we also need to be more unqualified in our celebration of science and in what the goods and the benefits it has brought to our society. I think if we develop more trust with scientists and celebrate their achievements, then we have the capacity to raise our little concerns. One of which is a simple one about the risk that we think science is going to solve all our problems and we just leave them there and don't engage as human beings who need to take on those issues. The second one is that science and technology increasingly is happening not in national institutions but in private companies. And the risk being that those companies will be incentivized to employ the applications of science, not necessarily for the benefit of all, but for commercially viable projects or for projects of national interest and competition. So within that, I want to say one other thing I want to take from science is the scientific method. The fact that scientists are working together, agree that our world has its own objectivity, and that we need to be willing to propose ideas and listen to the corrections of others, take those on board and do it in a kind of a fair sense of collaboration of the peer review. I conclude on a comment recently from Kazuo Ishiguro, the Nobel Prize winner for literature, in dialogue with Venki Ramakrishnan, Nobel Prize winner for chemistry. And he said, Ishiguro's father was a scientist. He said, in the humanities, we need to learn to speak proper truths. We have to test our ideas to see if the ideas we are proposing as being meaningful for human beings actually correspond with people's experience. We can't simply be in the business of emotional manipulation or sentimentality. We need to have a way of actually in dialogue with each other, working out whether our ideas are actually going to be progressive, supportive, and sustainable for a global community. My final contribution, from a theological perspective and from the perspective of the Christian tradition, I think the single best truth we can bring to that dialogue is something about the gracious and free love of God. We live in a world that is caught in a competition, an ethos of competition. We need to break that, remind people that our fundamental dignity is something that is given to us by the free gift of God's love. We don't earn it, we don't perform for it, we don't achieve it. It's not merited, it's a gift. And we need to begin from there to encourage people to use their gifts and talents as best they can, but not to think that their worth is somehow dependent on their achievements. And that way, perhaps we break some of the competition that can be so injurious to human well-being. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for being so effective and for being able to link all the topics that have been touched in this round table. So we are kind of in time, and we leave to the next session about testimonials. Thank you. Thank you again. And let me conclude by thanking our chairwoman, Anna Maria Tarantula, for organizing such a great conference. Thank you.